Hello everyone, welcome back to the second episode of Dev Diaries. I've made a considerable amount of progress since the time you guys were last here, so I'm going to go ahead and show you guys most of the things I've done so far. I may have forgotten a few things, but for the most part, I'm going to try and my best to show y'all. So at the start of the elephant in the room, there's a giant volcano in the middle of the map now. I couldn't figure out what gameplay element I wanted, and a more complex one might have taken longer, and in the second video wouldn't have taken so long to make, so I went ahead with a more simple approach and added a volcano. I made it a sibling to Round the Spire. I've been meaning to make at least two maps connected to each other now. So, it's fundamentally, its shape is similar to Round the Spire. There's just some key gameplay differences, such as the forest line being gone and replaced with unusable water instead. Yeah, I made a few minor gameplay adjustments, such as there being hills now. And the little forests you do have left are very sparse and thin. But yeah, if you recall around the spire itself is surrounded by water with two layers. And on this map, you are surrounded by water with two layers. So I say this jokingly, but it's like a zoomed in version around the spire. The volcano was meant to be an easy addition, but ended up being a nightmare. Normally you just put a cliff ID in the middle and tell it to be in the center of the map, and there you go, there's a volcano. But I wanted to go the extra mile and add an ashy layer around it, just to give the aesthetic that the volcano was kind of burning around it, because you rarely just have volcanoes that are just the volcano by itself. Usually the area around it is pitch black and burning. So I wanted to do that, but that was surprisingly difficult as it caused a lot of oddities. Like, for example, I'm going to show it on screen, but the ash layer just wasn't connecting to the ground at first. It took me a really long time to figure out how to connect it to the ground, which is ironic because Haven Exploration actually does exactly that, and I didn't realize I had already done that before. So I was kind of running in loops for nothing there. So just like in the previous video when I mentioned telling everything to stay away from water and cliffs was not difficult, but it was going to be a pain because you had to tell every instance of item to stay away from water and cliffs. The same thing was true for the ash. Tell each instance of animal, tree, yada yada to stay away from the ash. And then I had to tell each instance of ash item, like the dead trees and the dead bushes, to only stay in the ash and avoid everything else. Going beyond here, I even wrote a special code for certain things to stay further away from ash than other things. So for example, organic things such as trees and animals are coded to stay even further away from the ash than, say, for example, gold mines, town centers, and relics. And don't even get me started on the amount of terrains I had to try out for the volcano ash. At first I did the blackest of terrains that you would typically get from the Erebus map, but eventually I decided that was too harsh in contrast with the grass, and settled for this lighter terrain that came with the Chinese DLC. And yeah, I really do be putting this level of thought into most of my newer maps, and even then, I go back to the old one sometimes and try to add this level of thought to it. Also, you notice for playing on the March version of the map that I added, I went ahead and adjusted some of the terrain. I removed the Chinese grass, like I said, and replaced it with this version. And then on the Atlantean grass version, I lowered the index value of the dirt so that the grass would cover up more of the map and the contrast wouldn't hurt your eyes as much. I'm going to show you guys a before and after here on screen. Hopefully that helps visualize what I was talking about. Speaking of adjustments I've made to the randomness of the map, on top of marsh grass you can now have many types of trees. The trees, just like all the other random features of this map, are independently rolled. So you might find palm trees on the marsh version, or you might find marsh trees on the Egypt grass version. It's completely random. I've programmed around 6 or 7 types of forest you can get, all consisting of green trees because I didn't want to make the map too colorful. I kind of like how simple it is and how much of a tropical standard island vibe it gives, so I'm not going to try to make this map too colorful as opposed to something like Mount Awa or Sunlight Strands. On top of randomizing the terrain, I've also randomized quite a bit of the food you can get. So you start with a starting hunt, which is randomized to have around 6 or 7 combination of animals you can get that are either passive or aggressive. And then you have your close hunt, which is guaranteed to be a passive animal, and your far hunt, which is guaranteed to be an aggressive animal. Both the close and far hunt also have their unique pools of animals that they could draw from so that you're hopefully not getting the same animals too often. And upon many alpha tests, I found that the food on this map was too little, so I went ahead and added a code that either doubles the close hunt or the far hunt. It picks randomly each time you play. And then on top of that, the large map hunt will also have its own raid pool. In case you guys didn't know, when the map is made to be large or huge, it has a brand new animal pool that adds on top of the existing one. And it only activates when you activate the larger giant option, just to compensate for the map being larger and give you more resources. So hopefully I made that pool random enough too, but you guys gotta remember that's still an island map, so I couldn't go too crazy with the variety of animals that live here. I couldn't add like giraffes because it wouldn't make too much sense. And then on top of that, I've added several of the small details of the map. I'll show you guys a checkerboard version of the map, which removes the terrain. You can see that there's a lot of details that are not related to the terrain itself that I've added. I've randomized most of them so they'll change shades of green. So, for example, if you have a really bright green lime bush in one match, or another match could have a very dark leafy green bush instead. And flowers also independently random. Flowers on this map have a 50% chance of spawning, based on what type of flower it is. So the normal flowers that look like a bunch of flowers on the ground, 50% chance of spawning. The orchids have a 50% chance of spawning each time, and the little metal flowers have a 50% chance of spawning each time. So, like, maybe next time you play this map, pay attention to the ground and see what kind of stuff you got. Another sort of detail feature I added was the randomizing statue. You can see the gameplay right now, there's this statue by each relic. That statue will actually change once I finish implementing the feature. I'm gonna need the meter to come out first before I can finish implementing the feature because I plan on having it cycle between the Greek options alongside this statue. On top of that, in case this map didn't have enough randomized features, I've randomized the type of bird that can fly. The gameplay footage on screen currently lacks the bird because I forgot to add it at the time, but I did go back and add a randomizer to what type of bird you get. So you can get a hawk, an eagle, seagulls, or the flying red crown crane. Just like how I didn't add giraffes to the food pool, I also didn't add vultures just because I just wasn't feeling the vibe of it here on the grassy island. Now, another thing that I worked on was the team focus on this map compared to Round the Spire. Round the Spire has minimal team focus. You know, you do spawn a little closer to your team on that map, but not too much. On this map, on the other hand, I made you spawn very much closer to your teammates so that you'll be able to protect them easier. And just in case, I added a road that connects you to your teammates. Just like the volcano, this was supposed to be a simple feature, but turned out to be a nightmare. So, and I went back and watched the first Dev Diaries and noticed that we were missing berries. You know how on each map you're supposed to spawn with berries. So I went ahead and added that, simple and easy. Then I added the roads that connects you to teammates, simple and easy. But when I told things to stay away from the road, like plants, because it wouldn't make sense if trees and berries spawn on the road because those need roots and they wouldn't be able to root in such a road. The trees work just fine, you know. There was one issue with the stragglers, which are the trees that spawn around your town center each map. I had to make a custom straggler instead of using the built-in feature because the normal one couldn't be told to stay away from the roads, so the custom one had to look like the normal one while being able to stay away from roads as well. Took a little bit of elbow grease, but wasn't too hard and was able to be done, especially given that Mirkwood already does something similar. So I borrowed inspiration, which is something I do for a lot of my maps. You know, I use the official code because I feel like it's a waste to let it only be used once. And I'll repurpose it for other things such as the Elysium trees being used and Luminous Ravine. But going back to our main subject, I fixed that and I thought everything would be fine until the berries started fighting me. You see, on other maps that I told berries to stay away from roads, they do it just fine, but for some reason it just wasn't having it on this map. So I changed two things and that ended up fixing it. And the amount of errors I was receiving in my simulations dropped from 2% of my simulations to like, oh, just barely hovering above 0. So I'm pretty satisfied with this outcome. In case you didn't know, I run a bunch of simulations on my map involving bots. For the most part, the simulations is just to load the map and see if it actually works and receive me any error messages. And for some reason, the berries were flagging error messages to me consistently. So I lowered the amount of berries that can spawn in team games from the standard amount to slightly less. Don't worry, in 1v1s they will spawn a good amount still. And then on top of that, I made it so that you're slightly less close to your teammates so that when the berries mess up, they have a lot more room to fix themselves. And that seemed to do the trick. My error messages basically mostly disappeared. The only downside is that I can't have you and your teammates as close as I wanted to. Another thing I worked on while you guys were gone was making King the Hill compatible with this map. You see, maps aren't compatible with King the Hill by default. They have something like in the center. You have to program a special version of the map that only loads if a player has King the Hill enabled. And so I did that for this map, and it surprisingly went well. Unlike the volcano itself and the roads, the path was straightforward. In fact, programming King the Hill went so well I added a bunch of features like a flaming Vault. That's right. I'm going to go back and add this feature to other volcanic maps such as Volcanic Disruption. But yeah, we now have a flaming vault on this map, so if you play King of the Hill, you can look forward to enjoying that. And also I added the detail that the outer ring of lava it looks slightly different from the inner ring. The tricky thing about this though is that to change the lava types. While visually identical to the lava type you saw in the standard play, this lava type is actually the one used in the campaign that allows you to walk in on it, versus the one that was originally in the mountain does not allow anything on it. There's nowhere that lists the property of each terrain I'm aware of, so you just have to know this by trial and error, such as cliff terrains not being passable for anything. At the moment, due to its already pretty random nature, I don't plan on adding a secret version to this map like I do with my other maps. I think it's good as the way it is. I want to keep the aesthetic going and there's already enough variation. I'll probably add secret variants to the other new maps that are coming out, or go back and add one to the old one that might need some love. But for the most part, I think most of the old ones already have one. I can already confidently confirm that I don't intend to add a rare variation to Mount Awa or Starlight Strands anytime soon, since their colors are iconic and is what makes them them. I hope you guys realize that even though visually not much has changed, I have put in so much work into these technical things since Dev Diary 1's. You know, there's a lot of aspects that go into a map that are not just visual, it's technical things like these. And it makes me appreciate the developers when they make such a weird looking map like Snake Dance, because I'm like, dang, that must have taken a lot of work to make all that weird shapes work and generate consistently. And I hope that also explains to why I chose to make a more simple map for the first Dev Diary so that there wouldn't be too much of a delay between the second one. Because who knows what amount of work I would have had to put into a more complex looking map. Like, each part took several days. The fixing of the volcano ash not being attached to the ground was definitely a head scratcher that had me running for a few days. The road and berry incident was also a few days in its own right. The randomizing of all the features, including the bushes, the animals, the forest, the birds, that was easy, but took a lot of work in the sense that it was like tedious and I had to program all the variations, you know, because those are entered by hand in a way that I decide. And while I cut it out, there's a lot of errors you can make along the way. Even not capitalizing a single letter in an entire piece of code would make it not work. Thankfully, now I've figured out how to have the game tell me that's the issue. When I first started, I was working on a notepad and there was no warning whatsoever. It would just say map failed to load, and those were scary times. Yeah, I'm going to be making more complex maps while you guys aren't looking, and I'll hopefully have them as a template for when the Aztec DLC comes out. I can just substitute things accordingly. Until then, my next few Dev Diaries are going to be about fixing old maps, just so you guys can see how I maintain and patch out bugs. In specific, I think episode 3 will be about me trying to fix the pools on Mount Awa since they're spawning still fairly buggy despite several improvements. I'm thinking about just redoing how they spawn completely. And then on Dev Diary number 4, I'm just going to be going over several changes I'm making to old maps that are not big enough to make their own videos like the Mount Awa pools. Hopefully by Dev Diary number 5, I will have something cool to show you. If not, then I might have to pause the Dev Diary series as I make other random content until I finish making the map. Currently, all those contents are planning to be Age of Mythology related, so don't worry if you're here for Age of Mythology, although I will try and branch out to other things eventually. But as long as Age of Mythology is receiving new content, I'm going to be pretty invested in it. But yeah, I hope those are enjoyable and fun watches to hold you guys over until Dev Diary number 5 comes out and I have some fancy map to show you guys. Honestly, I don't know. This stuff is really hard, so I don't know if I can even figure out something by then. In case you haven't already, I've left a discussion post on the Age of Empires forum detailing, you know, what kind of stuff you want to see with the Aztec DLC in regarding to the environment. And hopefully if I receive some comments on that, I can make a video. If it stays dead, then I'm just going to silently tuck it in the corner and hope no one knows this. But yeah, I'm running out of things to talk about, so I'm not going to hold you guys too long. I did condense this video quite a bit from 26 minutes down to whatever it is now. So hopefully you guys can get all the information more condensed. I am still working on a documentary, which will be like, hopefully it'll be very long, but you know, with me making content right now, that's gonna delay the documentary a bit. Hopefully these are good appetizers until that comes out. But until then, I'm writing the script day by day, and then, yeah. Getting footage and voice acting it already sounds like a nightmare. I'm not even halfway done with the scripting yet. I'll be pretty happy if at least even one person watches it. I leave these videos behind as a sort of like passion project because I really love this game and I just want to make content for things I love. But yeah, that's all I got today. Thank you for watching, and I hope you all have a good day or night, depending on when you're watching this. Alright, this is me from the future. I forgot to mention the beta tests are already in progress. Thank you for everyone that helped.